What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb? Today, we're talking about Resident Evil 3, and the remake to be exact. So, as you know, a couple weeks ago I made a video talking about how the staff of Resident Evil came out to say that Resident Evil 3 is in its very early production stages, which is not unusual for Japanese games. A lot of people that watched that video don't exactly understand how video games work, so they didn't really understand what I was talking about, which is fine. You know, not everybody's a gamer, and that's okay. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is about how they can improve on Resident Evil 3 and how it can be a much better game if they implement a few things that were not in the... So as everyone knows, when Resident Evil 3 first released, it had a horrible camera angle and it controlled god awful. And that's not because the game was bad or the people making it didn't know what they were doing. It was technological restraints on the hardware itself that made the game be not so great. You know, there's a reason why Resident Evil didn't blow up until Resident Evil 4, and there's a reason why Resident Evil 4 is the cream of the crop. It was, in my opinion, and probably everyone else's opinion, the last Resident Evil game to actually control well and to play well and to still be fun, but also kind of scary at the same time. Although, of course, now as an adult, you're not going to get scared by a video game. That's just silly. But when we played it as little kids, that game scared us like a bunch. And for good reason, too. So, what can they improve upon? A lot of people are actually annoyed that Resident Evil 2 Remake is not going to have tank controls or fixed camera angles. I think that could be fixed and make both sides happy by allowing a mode that allows you to switch between fixed camera angles and tank controls and modern game elements that could make the game fun. Because you gotta understand, this game is not just being made for us, the fans that played it way back when. It's being made for everybody, including people that's never played the game before. So you gotta make it good for them as well. It's like when you think about an old school platformer and they try to remake it, they gotta make it where it's still fun, not just that old school platform, because obviously, you know, nostalgia glass is off. A lot of these games have not aged that well. So remakes are 100% needed for a lot of these games. Every Final Fantasy after they ended turn-based combat needs to be remade so that those games can still be good. And that's kind of the same with Resident Evil. Every single Resident Evil before Resident Evil 4 needs to be remade as close to Resident Evil 4 as they can to be considered good for future generations. So I think if they implement a camera angle and control swap like that you could please both sides. You could please the younglings like myself who came up with Resident Evil 4 and the elders who came up with the original trilogy way back when. If you don't think these games have aged badly, go download them on your PlayStation 3 or your PlayStation Vita. You will see these games have not had the best aging experience. Something else that I would like to see implemented is an online mode. But hear me out on that online mode. I forget what it was called. I think it was called Resident Evil Mercenaries on the Nintendo 3DS. Which allowed you to do just waves and waves of taking out zombies. And that was implemented in almost every single Resident Evil game under a different name or something similar. So having that as an online mode to play with your amigos would be very cool. But also, they could implement an even bigger on that, you know? Like Call of Duty Zombies is huge. If Resident Evil had their own form of zombie chronicles or whatever, it could probably extend the life of this game by a whole lot more. More people would get involved with it because it'd be the first proper zombie multiplayer game. And on top of that, they could have you playing as Nemesis. Someone could play as Nemesis, and then it could be like a zombie versus human thing, and you gotta clear out one side or the other. Kind of how Friday the 13th was when it launched about 2 years ago at this, actually almost 3 years at this point. That game's been out for a while, and that's kind of crazy to think about. But they could implement it somewhat like that to draw out an online curiosity for the game so that the game has a longer life cycle, because let's face it, most people that play these games are only going to play through the story one time. That'll be it, and then they'll move on to whatever else is out at the time. Most likely by the time everyone's done and over Resident Evil 2 Remake, it'll be days gone. What is it going to be when Resident Evil 3 Remake is done and gone? Who knows? That's for you to decide and the future us to decide. So that's two things so far that they could implement that could make the game even better. Something else I would love to see implemented to make the game better is not exactly a character creation system, but a character uniform creation system, kinda. Like, if you could change what your characters are wearing, you could change their hairstyles, make them more like to you, I guess. I'm not saying change the character's gender to a male, because that would completely ruin the story, but, you know, implement it so we can choose what they're wearing. I'm not talking about just like little outfits like there is in all the other Resident Evil games. I'm talking about allow an online store maybe where we can buy and customize our characters like Grand Theft Auto Online for the story mode part of the game. Customization has always been a huge staple of video games, and video games you get more immersed when you are able to create your character. So if you were able to create your character in Resident Evil 3 Remake, not completely recreate but at least the attire, that would be kind of interesting to see. I understand most people probably won't want that, but that would be a very interesting thing to see inside Resident Evil in my opinion. Something else I would like to see implemented is a cheat system. I'm not saying make it so where the game is incredibly easy, but I'm saying add cheat codes. Add cheat codes for unlimited ammo. Add cheat codes for God mode. Add cheat codes for special guns, special gun skins. Add cheat codes for, you know, goofy little stuff. Big head mode, you know, naked zombie mode. Something weird, you know? Modders have been doing this forever on Resident Evil 4 and the other Resident Evils on PC. So I think it's about time this just becomes a staple, you know? When Final Fantasy X was remade for the PC, those mods were made a staple of the franchise. You can go to, I think it's ability mode, and turn all that stuff on. You can turn it even on to one-hit kills on Final Fantasy X. So if Final Fantasy X can implement some mode like that, there's no reason for Resident Evil 3 not to implement a mode like that for its remake. Last but not least, I would like a endgame system that starts over kind of like Metal Gear Solid. If they could implement a new game plus that gives you multiple harder difficulties, which it somewhat already does, but it also adds a timed difficulty, that would be very, very exciting. Because if they could say, let's say, how long would you say the game is? I'm gonna say about 7.5 hours if you just play through it casually. If they gave you a timer with certain achievements and goals to complete the game in under 5 hours without using any of the cheats, if they were to implement this, is what I'm talking about, that would be very, very exciting and very challenging for trophy hunters and achievement hunters. So that would be very interesting to see them implement. Whether or not it happens or not, that is going to be something we're going to have to tell in the future, but I'm pretty sure none of this stuff's actually going to be implemented. It's just things I would love to see implemented to make the gameplay experience a little bit better. I would also like an easier mode, because I'm not going to lie, whenever I go back to play the games, it's pretty difficult for me. And that's kind of weird to say, but I just don't like the fixed camera controls. It might just be that. Fixed cameras and tank controls might just be what makes it difficult. Because I can complete Resident Evil 4 in less than an hour and a half. Well, less than about 2 hours, I should say. And the other games I can complete in very quickly. But the older ones, I just cannot. Maybe it's because of the bad controls. Who knows? But with that being said, that's what I would like to see Resident Evil 3 Remake do to do better. We're probably going to cover Resident Evil a ton on this channel in 2019. So with that being said, try not to die, and I'll see you